Hello everyone, it is I, Deimos. Today we're going to cover 30 tips and tricks you can use across a tournament at any level. I tried to make sure these were a bit varied to suit all level ranges from level 1 to level 60. A lot of these are going to be geared more towards newer players though. I'm hoping some higher level players do get use from these. A lot of these tips do seem trivial to me, but I've also been playing the game through the betas and since day 1, so something I may know about, you may have no idea about. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Tip number 1 is going to be use the trading post for extra storage. Just make sure to price the items high enough to where no one is actually going to pay that much for the items, and if they do, I guess it's still a win for you since you made significantly more than you normally would. Now previously, you could use the post for cheap transfer of items, but you can no longer do that as of patch 1.1, so keep that in mind. Use the map to separate your storage load. Using the map, you can see the crafting stations in each town. Separate your resources in the town with the highest level and connecting crafting stations. What I mean by this is having your arcane materials in the same area as your stone cutting if possible, since there is some crossover with the two crafts. Do 3 faction missions for 10 times rewards every day. This is a great way to get some easy gold, XP, faction XP, and tokens. Do whichever are in the highest level zones you can access, as those are usually going to give you the most rewards. Hit town boards daily for cheap standing, and if you're leveling, almost free levels. Town boarding has always been the best way to level, but it's also a really good way for farming up some territory standing. Don't use the XP gain card more than a few times. This card is a waste as it becomes useless once you hit level 60, so using it a few times is fine, just don't obsess over it. Following on the last tip, always use the storage card. This is easily the best card, so make sure to use this any chance you get. If you want to take screenshots, hit ALT+H, and to clear the UI, hit M to open your map and it'll come right back. Sometimes you might get stuck and not be able to change your camera distance. If that happens, just hit Alt again and you'll be fine. Another cheap way to get standing is spamming light rations. You gain 1 XP for standing per ingredient, so if you wanted to make some of the more expensive foods, then you can do that and you'll gain a little bit more. This is by no means the fastest, but doing a few thousand a day will add up pretty quick. New World has rested XP. If you're just hopping on for the first time of the day, do your highest XP yielding town boards or your faction missions if they end up giving more XP, since like I said previously, your first 3 faction missions of the day are going to give you 10 times rewards. When running corruption zergs, often the larger the group, the harder it can be to get corruption completion, especially if you're not among the players in the front. A good way to ensure that you almost always get points is by attacking the Veils or the Carapace Ball. If for some reason you're not able to do that, it's always a good idea to bring a ranged weapon and tag the boss as much as possible. This will ensure that you almost always get credit for those really short corruption breaches. Use your health potions. Health pots have been a bit of a pain to make in the past, but they've been made a lot easier with patch 1.1, so if you have consumables, don't be afraid to use them. Pick up the notes around the map. These grant XP, and if you enjoy lore, are a really good way to see what's happening around the world. Take the repeatable quest at the entrance of the dungeons as soon as you're able to, and anytime you run that dungeon, make sure you get these quests done. They're simply free XP and a good amount of it as well, so don't miss out on these. Use your first house discount wisely. I highly recommend waiting to buy the highest tier house and then using it in either Everfall or Windsward depending on where you hang out the most, and then keeping your inn in whatever region you're doing your main questing in. The reason for this is that you can't refund your house after you buy it. You can only abandon it, so don't waste your gold on a cheap house, buy that big mansion. House tiers affect how many storage containers you can place. This ties into the last tip, and tier 2 homes can hold 2 chests, tier 3 can hold 3 chests, tier 4 can hold 4, and you'll know what tier a home is by its price. Tier 2 homes are 5 to 10k, tier 3 homes are 15k, Tier 4 homes are 20k, so you can see using that half price discount on a Tier 4 home is extremely worth the wait. When you're running around the world here and find yourself overwhelmed, you can always climb something impossible for mobs to climb and reset their aggro. The enemy aggro in this game is super easy to manipulate, and there's plenty of spots to hide to de-aggro. This is the simplest and 100% guaranteed way to de-aggro anything. Keeping that last tip in mind, whether you're a ranged DPS, mage, or even a healer, it's a golden rule to never attack bosses from a significant height. The only thing that's easier to do than de-aggro enemies is pull enemies as a ranged DPS or a healer. And once they've locked onto you, it's almost guaranteed they're going to retreat at some point, even if they aggro onto someone else after. It's weird, but the more you play the game, the more you're going to realize the enemy aggro in this game is very fragile and anything can throw it off. Never pass up the chance to collect motes. Motes are one of the most annoying materials and are needed for so much in-game gear and crafting in general, and the mote sync from base motes to quintessence is astonishing. To put it in perspective, it's 60 motes to 1 quintessence ratio. Even if you have no mind to craft a new world, you can always sell them on the trading post since they're almost always going to be in demand. The next tip is going to be take advantage of anything that is in the game and is helpful. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying use bugs or exploits. I mean, if you find a really good farm spot or a really great way to gather something that isn't an exploit, then use it as often as you can. For example, elemental animals used to drop various quintessence. Remember the thing I just said was a massive pain to make? There used to be a really good way to gather some of these, but it was removed and replaced with motes. But currently all elemental animal harvesting is disabled due to them dropping too many motes. It was only dropping about 75 motes per animal, which is a really good amount and made up for the quintessence being removed, but it was too many, so the New World devs are continuing to show that they don't want anything to be necessarily easy or fast. So if you find a really good craft to level fast or a nice farming area, use it because it may very well get removed for something not so yielding. If you're running an elite zone with a few groups and someone is already there, don't get upset if they ask you to leave. In New World, they have a system in place where the more groups that hit an enemy, the less chance it has to drop good loot or any loot at all. On top of this, now in elite zones, mobs scale to the number of players in the area, so unless you're only hitting chests, it's pretty much diminishing returns running high level elite zones with more than 2 groups, even more so with these scaling changes. Now this really only applies if there's groups farming a boss, but to essentially avoid griefing the players that are there first, just let them know that you and your group will kill once and then be on your way. To add to the previous tip, if you're running in elite zones, make sure everyone is in a group. Solo players are going to count as a full group when tagging enemies, so if you have 2 groups and 2 solos, it counts as 4 total groups, and that is going to destroy your drop chances. If you're really big on farming, you may know about this, but if not, there's some really good resources for the game to take the guesswork out of finding materials that you want. If you look up New World Interactive Map, you'll see 2 fantastic customizable maps that are going to show you where anything in the game is, so you can plot out routes for chests, orichalcum, iron, literally anything you're looking for, these sites are going to have. Cannot recommend these enough. I highly recommend finding a skill that you think is the most useful to you and start leveling it immediately. You don't need to power level this if you don't want to, but just keep passively working on it and you'll gain some really good levels over time, and then whenever you want to focus it, you'll have less work to do. Crafting is huge in this game, and if you're not crafting, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Find a really good way to make money. The gold gain in the New World is not good. There are very few ways of making gold that don't involve selling items on the trade post, and none of them are very consistent. If you need ideas, selling raw or refined materials like wood, ingots, motes, etc. are really good and surefire ways to make at least a little income every day. When close to a shrine, there's going to be a big beam of light in the sky. This is a small tip, but a good way to pinpoint a shrine nearby if you don't have one. Riposte on the rapier is a good way to survive anything. If you time this right, you can totally survive unscathed anything between a boss heavy attack and even ranged attacks. When it comes to building a class, there's nothing wrong with using a guide if you find it. However, it's important to understand your build rather than just copy and paste what someone else says. Sure, they could have the best build, and if you want to use it, that's great, go right ahead. But understanding what does what and why is a really great way to understand your rotation further and maybe even improve on it depending on your playstyle. This one is going to be a new change, so in case some of you don't know, being PvP flagged now offers a 10% luck bonus for chests and monsters and a 30% luck increase when gathering on top of the 10% XP increase. So if you're on a late night farming run, it might actually be worth it to risk it and flag up before heading out on that farm. Use repair kits. Repair kits are heavily underused. This tip is really only for players using tier 4 and above gear, and as all of you know, repair costs in this game are insane. You can shell out hundreds of thousands of gold repairing armor and weapons. Repair kits are the solution to this. A master repair kit, for example, is going to repair any tier 5 gear piece fully at no cost besides the repair kit. Use these instead of your hard-earned gold, they are well worth it. Use consumables. As I mentioned before, health potions are easier to make now, but this tip is more for all the consumables in the game. Coatings, wards, food buffs, all of them are meant to be used and vastly increase your gameplay when utilized. 65 plus corruption portals nearly require corruption tinctures if you don't have a solid group of healers running with you. As I've covered in my guide videos, coatings are so important when fighting arena bosses, but any high level content will be made so much easier if you use the tools that the game gives you. And finally, one more kind of extreme tip for you guys. If you ever run into any issues in the game that relogging doesn't help, always restart Steam if that's the case. There are a lot of issues that I've had before that relogging simply didn't fix, but if I restarted Steam, it would always fix the issue. A lot of people in the game have done this as well. I always tell people to do it, and it always works for them. Unless it's like a serious game issue, Most of the time, a lot of the issues can be resolved by restarting Steam if a relog won't fix it. I hope you all learned something and enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave a like, it helps me out a ton, and comment down below any tips that you didn't see in this video that you think are useful or your favorite tip from the list. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see all of you in the next one.